So looking at shape, I referenced a few of these concepts in our previous mini lecture, so hopefully this lecture helps to define them. What would art be without shapes? Not much. So walking you through some of the various shapes that we can look at, we'll start first with, I think, the most easy to understand, which is geometric shape. And this is a famous piece by Josef Albers, who is a very well-known modern artist. So he was working at the beginning of the 20th century. And he started looking into the idea of can shape be subject? And he started his famous, what we call homage to the square series. So this is just one example from the homage to the square. Homage, by the way, as a word means to give honor to, basically. So he's giving honor to the squares. And he did a whole series throughout his life about these squares, different color, interactions and such. But you'll notice a geometric shape is just what it sounds like if you've dealt with geometry. You have squares, circles, right, triangles. These are shapes that are governed by the rules of mathematics and logic. And they are very systematic, right? They follow a set of rules, right, outlined by their geometry. So they're very fixed. By contrast, you have what we call organic shapes. And organic shapes are basically the opposite of geometric in a sense that they're free and they follow the rules of nature to a sense, in the sense of biomorphic nature, living nature, growing nature. So one of my favorite examples of organic shapes is the interior of the the Tassel House. I was mixed it up. The Tassel House, right, which was created by Victor Horta as the architect and designer of the space. So this is an Art Nouveau building. And Art Nouveau is very much known for its inspiration from nature. It's just one of the hallmarks of looking at an Art Nouveau piece. This is an early 20th century movement, so you're looking like 1910s, 1920s, right? And again, you get these motifs or subjects of growing things. You'll notice throughout this piece here, you'll notice you have it in like the ironwork of the railing. You have it in the paintings on the walls. You have it in the light fixtures. You have it in the mosaic floors. This curving, moving, biomorphic, living type of shape, right? It's moving through the space. Again, if you want to go back to the other lecture, you can think about gestural line perhaps here, right? And kind of combine these ideas and think about how, again, you can speak about art, right, using the terms that are being shared with you. But again, I think the main thing here is that, it is a living, growing kind of biomorphic idea of shape. Now, the next category is abstract, right, shape. And abstraction, it's one of those words that often people tend to misuse. And so I try to explain it this way using the Cézanne piece that you see here of the mountain Montagne Sainte-Victoire, and kind of trying to use this mountain, this painting of a mountain to solidify the idea of abstract shape. Abstraction is taking something you can see, you can recognize, such as a mountain, right? Or a person, let's say, and breaking it down, right? Breaking down the elements. And so you'll notice this isn't photographic. We're not looking at it and saying, wow, that looks exactly like the mountain, right? It's not a photographic representation and it's not meant to be. It takes the idea of the mountain and breaks it down into, like, again, cubes almost, and, parsing out of paint and different things. I'm breaking apart the form in a sense. So abstraction, to me, it takes something from nature, something recognizable, and starts to break it down. Now, often people will say abstract and they mean this. So you'll notice that's sort of a misappropriation of the term if you want to be technical about the matter. And of course we do, because we're learning how to be art appreciators. So often you'll hear people look at something like this and say, well, that's abstract. No. This is what we call non-representational. You've heard me say this word now a couple different times. Non-representational means it's not representing anything. That's exactly what the word says. And as I mentioned previously, Kandinsky is the one really credited for this in the early 20th century. His motivation was to create art, create compositions that was not referencing nature, was not referencing people, places, None of that, right? And if you want to be really, really clear, he was rejecting traditional subject. He was saying, why do we have to have a subject? And that was a big question to ask in art, and it still is for a lot of people. A lot of people just get very upset if you suggest that art doesn't need a traditional subject, like a landscape or a portrait. They're like, well, what is this stuff? I've met more than my share of viewers who look at something like this painting and just reject it wholesale. They have zero interest in it. They just think it's nonsense. They don't like it. I like theories. So for me, I'm saying, if you understand what's going on, that should be enough for you. You don't have to like it. Because let's face it, right? Liking something and understanding it are two separate things entirely. So with this piece, I say you have to understand what non-representation is. And again, it's rejecting traditional subject. Notice he won't even give you a title. He's like, improvisation number 28. Yeah, and I'm just improvising. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm numbering them in order as I paint them. So again, sort of cutting the ties to traditional subject matter. Now, what's fascinating is often when I ask students about this painting, I'll say, well, what do you see? What do you see? Tell me what you see. And invariably, they want to see representation. They'll pick things out and say, I see eyelashes. There they are, right? I see a little house up on a hill. My favorite, I always say, is the fried egg. I see a fried egg. But, there's some things that people often see. There's other things that people say they see. The idea that for us humans, seeing something, being able to say, I see this, is way more satisfying, I think, at the end of the day for us mentally than it's a bunch of lines and color. Remember I told you, can line just exist because line wants to? Can color just exist because color wants to? I'd argue yes. But again, it's really something hard for humans to grapple with, to say that non-representation can exist alongside traditional subject matter.